You are listening to Six Finger Learning with Jason Free.
Kids, it's Jason Free again, and you are back at Six Finger Learning. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are, wherever you are, we're happy that you're with us again. So, this is our second podcast. I'm going to treat it a little bit like my second class meeting, as if we were all together in the same room. I promise you this classroom shit's going to end probably after today. Because I don't want to bore you with all the crap that I was forced to do as an instructor that the university powers that be passed down. But I do want to continue this crusade to really push people to think. And we ended our last meeting with the question, is there a better way? And I asked everybody to write things down, and if this were class, I would, take up their papers to say, give me your work on what you were thinking about. Is there a better way? Is there a better way to get our rights? Is there a better way to go to school? Is there a better way to whatever? It doesn't matter. Just is there a better way? Just trying to get people to think. And I would look at those papers and for two reasons. Number one, are they actually thinking? But also get a diagnostic reading of the level of the room in terms of writing so that over the course of the term, I could address their writing skills. But we're not going to do that today. We're going to be talking about a variety of different things that many people, I don't believe, ever really think about as it relates to education and learning. And I want to start off by asking the question, what would you think if we could get somebody from 100 years ago, from 1920, to come to America in 2020? What would blow their minds? Probably going to the hospital. That would look like beyond Star Trek for them. If they would see the internet and all the information that's available instead of like a library, just compared the internet to a 1920s library. Transportation. Look at how we do things. I mean, we have electric cars. There's even cars out there that are doing things with hydrogen. Now, I know that they had some forms of electric cars and they actually used steam and things like that, but there's no way that they could get past, how we're moving towards self-driving cars and navigation and just all the different accessories that go along with it and just what they look like and the roads and everything and how you can go from point A to B and how your lives would just be completely wide open because in the 1920s, most people hung around their hometowns unless they could hop a train. Couldn't get on an airplane. They couldn't do all the things. Anyway, I'm beating that part to death. I apologize. But what if they went into a school? Would they really be completely blown away? Would they be taken aback? I don't think so. I mean, in some places you could say that the use of laptops or things like that or an overhead projection, and that could be different. But for the most part, it's exactly the same. It's a row of desks where kids show up, and there's generally a singular authority in the room who is pouring information into their heads, expecting them to regurgitate that information to prove that they've learned something. Now, is that right? I'd say it's a complete sign of why things are so fucked up. Why people have a lot of the problems that they have, both personally, professionally, socially, at a societal level. Also, in the 1920s, you didn't have any of the debt that was incurred with college. Most people didn't go to college, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But if you did go, you actually were prepared for a job that you could say, you know what, I'm going to get a gold watch at the end of this. Now, a lot of you may not have any idea what I mean when I say a gold watch, because way back in the day, The idea was that you went to school, you found a job, you stayed at that one job for 25 years, and when you retired, they gave you a gold watch. That was like the cliche. Your retirement was a gold watch. Now, how many college students out there really think that they're going to get prepared for a job that's going to last for 20, 30 years, and they stay there with the same company? I would hazard to guess if you have half a brain, you'd understand that shit's not going to happen. So, why hasn't education evolved like every other element of our society? Well, we believe it's on purpose. We believe that it's intentional. And I'm not going to get into all of that. And it's not conspiratorial at all. It just is what it is. And over the course of these podcasts, we'll share that information with you. But right now, not so much. But I would ask my class right now, guys, what's the point of going through all of this? And 9 times out of 10, they'd all say, to get a job. I mean, this isn't like we're coming together so that we can share poetry underneath a tree and broaden our horizons and have these wonderful epiphanies about life and living. For the most part, that shit doesn't happen on college campuses. It's about getting you prepared to become a part of the economic engine of our society, to get to work. And education prior to college is essentially a means of our society of allowing its older individuals to have their kids cared for while they're members of the economic engine of our society. It's fucking daycare. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But what is our economic engine of our society? And it would be just as silent as it is right now, for the most part. So I'll just cut to the chase. It's capitalism. No matter what you feel about capitalism, good, bad, or indifferent, it is what it is. We're all about capitalism. And our educational system is just like any other industry. It is producing widgets. It's not producing anything esoteric or special. It's just like a shoe factory. It's just like a microchip factory. It's just like a publishing company, whatever. It's producing widgets, and the widgets are you. You're being stamped with, you're going to be an accountant. You're going to be a nurse. You're going to be a teacher. You're going to be a lawyer. So it just produces these widgets, and certain educational factories are known to produce, or supposedly known to produce, better doctor widgets than others, better teacher widgets than others, and that's why people want to go to certain educational factories or universities, because they want to be cranked out as a widget to fulfill a spot within our economic engine, help our society in some way. That's what it is, guys. You're being processed. I was processed. I was a professional fucking college student. 3 degrees. 3 college degrees. Just went back to back to back. And I went through that. I was processed just like you're being processed. So this sounds really ominous and whatnot, but it actually worked for a while. A short period of time, these things worked. In the 1950s, if you went through the educational process and you went through high school and you got a degree from, a diploma from high school, you could actually make a halfway decent living. Better than a halfway decent living. You could have a car, you could have a couple of kids, you could have a house, and you would be, quote unquote, living the dream. But all that changed in terms of what was being produced. The same process was happening, but what happened around the time that I went to college, you couldn't get a high school diploma and expect to make a decent living. This was in the 80s. End of the 80s. I'm old, but I'm not that old. End of the 80s. If you wanted to make money and have a chance, and we'll get to the whole ideas behind this in a moment as well, but the idea was if you wanted to have a chance to have a decent living, you couldn't just go to high school. High school was just an attendance certificate. You had to go to college. And you had to go and sustain this process of being processed, of going through the educational system's machinations and having them change you and churn you out into a certain type of widget. Today, if you get a degree, society tells you even maybe that's not enough. That if you want, quote, real money and live the real dream of having the big house on the hill, you got to go to graduate school. So, a lot of this has to do with antiquated systems. The educational factories, the high schools, the elementary schools, the middle schools, the colleges, those are all just educational factories churning out widgets called students. They haven't changed much. They're really no longer relevant as far as we're concerned, and it's because if you look at all the problems that are happening, the widgets that are being produced, and how they're functioning or not functioning within our economic engine, you can see that they're really no longer relevant. But there's other things going on here. And to describe one of those elements that we believe that's going on of why, education is so fucked, we're going to steal from, I believe it was Doug Stanhope. He has this bit, a comedian, great comedian, that I'm basically going to be riffing off of a little bit to make a point. But the idea is this. If you are sitting in a classroom in college as a freshman, typically overly generalizing here, you're 19 years old. Of course, there's exceptions to all of this. So you've been in existence for 19 years. All right? And for about 12 of those years, you have been through a variety of educational factories, okay? Being led by people who, in the grand scheme of things, are maybe a couple of decades older than you. That's it. And you're ostensibly being led by your parents. Your parents are the people who put you in these factories. And why do they put you in these factories? Because they were put in those factories. There's not a lot of thought involved. And there can't be a lot of thought involved. And this is where the Doug Stanhope part comes in, which is he has this bit where he's talking about when you're born, you're just, thunked out. And you don't know anything about the world. You don't know anything about the rules. You don't know anything about society or expectations or happiness. You're just this crying creature that, is looking for help so it doesn't die. And who you cared for? You're cared for by your parents. And in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that long that they had just been thunked out in exactly the same position. Just blindly looking for assistance in any way at all just to survive. And they had been raised by people who hadn't been around for very long. So it's just grabbing all of these societal expectations that had been placed before you that haven't had a lot of thought. And you're just going through these broken systems. And as we go through it, we don't really question it. Why? Because the people in front of us, well, obviously this shit's supposed to be working, because otherwise, you would have changed it, right? Mom and dad, grandma, granddad, you would have changed that if things had been bad. No, they didn't change it. They didn't change it at all. Look at your classroom and compare it to their classroom. It's mostly the same fucking classroom. It's mostly the same school. And why didn't they change it? Because they bought into toilet tissue illness. That's right, toilet tissue illness. If you look at this podcast, we have an image up from, I think it was from Ladies' Home Journal from the 1920s, where you could see an advertising campaign for toilet paper that absolutely petrified the general population. I mean, look at that shit. It's basically saying if you get cheap toilet paper, your asshole is going to rot so badly that you're going to have some sort of horrific surgery in order to fix it. So buy our toilet tissue. Avoid toilet tissue illness. Completely fucking made up. But it was hugely impactful. That is what has caused the problems with our educational system. Just like this manufactured toilet tissue illness horse shit, our society has created this belief that you have to go through our educational systems in order to have a chance. You have to. If you don't, you're going to be a fucking bum. You're going to be the worst member of our society. You're going to be this mooch, this leech that doesn't contribute in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And that's all horrible stuff. Just like having those fucked up surgical tools, being worked on your ass. Holy fuck. Okay, I'm in. Put me in school. Kindergarten, no problem. Absolutely. Yeah. I'll put my kids there. Absolutely. No problem. They have to avoid toilet tissue illness. They have to avoid being a bum. They have to avoid not being able to get a job. You can't get a job without going to school. And then how in the fuck were there jobs before the 20th fucking century? Specifically in America. How the fuck were there jobs before there were educational systems or places that didn't have educational systems? People weren't fucking happy. People weren't wealthy. People weren't able to contribute and help people. Absolutely they were. It's all bullshit. It's toilet tissue illness. And if you're sitting in a desk as a 19-year-old, again, generalizing, just making a point. If you're sitting at a desk as a college freshman, 19 years old, and your plan is to go through another fucking educational factory for 4 years, if you're lucky, but let's just, for argument's sake, say 4 years, I would say, think about where you are right now. Think about where you were 4 years ago as a freshman in high school. Think about your life then. Think about what was difficult, what was easy. Think about your schedule. Think about who your friends were. Think about your life. Probably pretty fucking stupid today, right? Probably laugh at it. Probably wish, holy shit, I wish I could go back 4 years from now and do that differently because that was so much easier. Think about how fast that went by. Well, the next 4 years are going to go by even faster. And today, the stresses that you have today, the worries that you have today, the effort that you're putting forth today, the sacrifices you're putting forth today are going to look just as easy as what your stresses and your sacrifices and what you had to do 4 years ago as a high school freshman were. Guys, it just keeps getting cranked up. It just keeps getting cranked up. And the best thing that you can do is avoid this toilet tissue illness mindset. Now, am I saying that all of education is horrible and there's no merit to it? Absolutely not. What I'm saying is that you have to demand more. You have to demand more than what your parents demanded, what your grandparents demanded, what you demanded when you were in high school. You have to demand more of your instructors. You have to demand more of the factories that you're going through. And you have to demand more, most importantly, of yourself. You have to stop doing the shit that you've been doing. You've got to understand that you have to do more. You have to understand that the expectations of the world will not be met by these factory processes that you're going through. And this mindset of all I've got to do is get good grades, get good letters of recommendation, get through the end of this, get my new piece of paper, this degree, and everything's going to be okay. Because if you stop and think about it, and I know that you can because everybody is smart. Everybody's smart. The question is, how do they apply their intelligence? And if you apply your intelligence to this issue right now, how does this make sense for me? I'm paying all of this money to go to this educational factory, and when I'm done, I'm going to owe them a lot of money. And what kind of job am I going to get? All you got to do is do a little bit of research, people, and realize that you're going to be stuck in a hole. You're starting from a deficit, and a deficit that didn't happen anywhere near as often as it was 100 years ago, 50 years ago, even 20 years ago. And what are these factories helping you get prepared for? They have no fucking clue what jobs are going to be available. Like I said, the world is going to change at even a faster rate than that person that we brought back from 100 years ago. There's jobs and job titles and tasks that aren't in existence today. How in the fuck are these factories going to be able to, get you ready for that? And I'm not talking about, this is going to be 30 years from now, 50 years from now. No, I'm talking about like a decade at the most. You're just going to be paying for your widget degree. I mean, think about this. Let's say you're going into accounting. There may not fucking be accounting in 20 years, 15 years, or 10 years. I mean, shit, it may just be automatic. Just shit's accounted for. I don't know. I'm dumb when it comes to numbers, but I'm trying to make a point. You've got to get out of this toilet tissue illness thinking, hey, if I do this, good things will happen. If I get the right toilet paper, they won't, have surgery on my ass. That's just not going to work. You need to demand more. And you need to demand more from an intelligent perspective of understanding where things are lacking. And the number one issue in education that needs to change is that it's just set up to sustain the status quo. Now, I'm not going to be discussing K through 12 right now. I'll do that later. But here are just a couple little highlights. High school students should be paid. Every single kid who goes to high school should have a salary, especially in a capitalistic society. And again, I'll get into that later. I want to talk about college, universities. That's where the big money is. That's where the big factories are. There's different people out there with different podcasts that talk about, the big brand names. The Yale is like Coca-Cola. And, Billy Bob's Barber College is like, shit you get from the dollar store education and everything in between. It's all about branding. It's all about what kind of widget you're going to be when you get, processed through their different machinations and whatnot. Just like a fucking cow gets processed, and some places process it and it's wonderful meat, and other places get processed and it's, dog food. Well, you're not meat. Well, you are, but anyway, getting a little weird. I apologize. So let's just talk about college, and let's just talk about if you guys were sitting in a room and I'm talking to my freshman class and I'm saying, okay, how much are you guys paying to be here? And I've taught at places where it was free because the state had it set up to where people, if they had certain qualifications or whatnot, grades or whatever, lotteries or whatever, it's basically free. And I have gone to places where it's $50,000 a semester and everything in between. So let's just, for mathematical sake, and I'm dumb when it comes to numbers, let's just say people are spending $10,000 a semester to go to that college. Okay, so what do you get for that 10 grand? It's pretty much high school, right? You have a schedule. You show up to that room at a certain day and time. You sit down at a desk. You get information in whatever way they disseminate to you. And you demonstrate that you know that information, and you go to another class and you do that. It could be history, it could be composition, it could be biology, it could be marketing, it could be whatever the hell it is, doesn't matter. And then that semester's over with, you pay another $10,000 for the next semester, and you do the same fucking thing. And you do that for 4 years. Now, of course, I'm overly generalizing, but I'm making a point here. The point is, do these processes and the money and the time that's invested in these processes produce value for you? Are they giving you the return on your investment of money and time and energy that you ought to have? I would say, hell no, it doesn't. And I go back to the original question from the first day of class. Is there a better way? There's like countless better ways. For example, what if college was not set up the way that it is now, and what college or universities were, instead of being educational factories, just extensions of the K through 12 educational factories that we have in America? What if they were business incubators instead? What if when you chose your business incubator instead of your factory, the idea was this, is that you're going to be joining a group of 20 students, just like an English class. I mean, sometimes it's 30, sometimes it's 50, whatever, but let's just stick with 20 students. You're going to be joining a group of 19 other students, and you're going to be creating a business from day one. And that $10,000 that you were spending on each semester wouldn't be just individually directed at your tuition, your fees and whatnot, but it would be pulled together to where you could start a company with $200,000. And that you would be able to work with students in a way where you would fill certain slots for a given company that you're creating together. So if you're mathematically inclined, fuck taking English classes. You're going to be in charge of the profit and loss statements. You're going to be in charge of the business administrative side of things. What if you're creative? Great. Graphic design, logos, whatever. What if you're verbal? Fantastic. You're going to be a person who makes the presentations, who make the pitches, sales, whatever. What if you could create these companies? And it could be any kind of company that you wanted. It could be something as altruistic as, we're going to help rescue animals. We're going to help underprivileged kids, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. Or it could be something evil. We're here to just make money, capitalism, whatever. All kinds of good and bad things can happen within capitalism. And so the same thing should be able to happen at these business incubators. And so you'd have these different groups of people who would come together and create a business. And one of the decisions that you would make after deciding what type of business that you would have, and after the different roles people would have, is that you would then go out and hire your advisors. Advisors being instructors or people out in the community. Instead of being assigned, you go and you get your schedule and you find out, oh, Mr. Free is my English teacher. Well, you may not want Mr. Free anywhere fucking near your business or anywhere near your education, anywhere near your learning. Tough shit. He's been assigned to you. That's who you're going to get. What if you could actually interview your instructors? Some of these instructors, I can tell you right now, there's some adjunct instructors out there who get treated like shit, who don't get paid dick, who would be amazing at helping starting off companies. They would jump all over it. And there's other ones. There are other professors out there that are giants, absolute just giants within their fields that you probably couldn't afford. Maybe you could give them some equity. All of this is capitalism, guys. All of this are things that you're supposed to be able to do when you get out of the educational factories of universities. unless you're going to be a fucking drone. And I believe that's what happens the vast majority of the time when people go through these educational factories blindly, not demanding more of themselves, not demanding more of their institutions or of their money or of their time or of their energy. They just become fucking drones that get stuck in a cubicle. Put a headset on, put your little fuzzy-haired troll next to your phone. That shit sucks. If you really want the true American dream, start a fucking company. Get some advisors. And going back to the model that I was talking about before, just think about this. There aren't very many companies out there that get that level of advisement, that level of security of knowing that every semester another injection of cash is going to be coming to that company. You put $200,000 in, that's why you're securing your spots, you're understanding what you're trying to do, you hire your advisors, you start rolling. A lot of places are like, shit, for the next 3 years, we got to make this happen this way with no salaries and this and this and this. And it's like, no. Next semester, there's another $200,000 coming this way. And the next semester, and the next semester. You are being set up for success in that model. You are being set up to be a productive component of our economic engine. Well, what if all hell breaks loose? What if these people don't work out? Well, again, you're learning what you need to learn once you leave the educational factories. That's exactly the same sort of circumstances and situations that occur in the, quote, real world. Shit doesn't work out for companies. Departments get closed down. Companies shut down. And you got to pick yourself up and move on and learn how to deal with that. So the universities need to change to become business incubators and provide this last little bubble of protection. You can use our resources, you can use our instructors, you can have other people come in to be your advisors and whatnot, but we're here to guide you and protect you and try to keep you away from those failures. But if you do have those failures, so fucking what? Learn from that. That's what learning is. Learning isn't, I know everything and I do everything well automatically without having been told or shown how to do it. That's not learning. So it'd be better to learn that at an earlier age and how to overcome that than being shat out as a widget and being thrown into some other company that you have no idea about their core values, about their processes, about, you know, their company culture, what they do, how they do it, and all this kind of stuff. And they have no idea about you, and you're just supposed to become assimilated into them all over again. What if the companies are successful? Wow. Well, then you have a job. Then you have more than a job. You have a company. You have something that's being produced automatically that's helping you, helping a group of other students, and helping our economic engine. And if universities were smart, they would say, come to us, we're going to set you up with the best incubator, but we're going to own a certain percentage of your company for life. Think about that. Any university, any college could just be making bank. They would be these massive components of our economic engine. Now, some of this stuff seems a little bit outlandish. It's not outlandish at all. And I can go deeper into other sort of areas, but I just don't want to do that. The idea, though, is that what's happening now is a waste of time, energy, and money. And it's been years since it's been helpful. And I would say it's been years, way too long, in terms of inflicting pain and inflicting damage and hurting our students and therefore hurting our society. Shit has to change. Which gets us back to a point that I was making before. This is all your parents' fault. and your grandparents' fault and everybody who came out before you. Because I promise you, most of your family members have had some sort of realization over the course of their life where they're like, this is fucking stupid. This is fucking horrible. And yet they don't do anything about it at all. And yet they do the worst thing they can possibly do. They put their own children into the same system. Now, if you look at this, if you want to come up with an analogy, it's almost like someone who is in a really horrible relationship. And they're trying as hard as they can to make it work. But from time to time, they have these epiphanies. They're looking up at the ceiling at night. They're staring off into space at work, or they're stuck in traffic or whatever. And they have these epiphanies of, this is just wrong. My life shouldn't be this way. God damn it, it doesn't have to be this way. Unfortunately, a lot of people in that situation just go back to it. What I'm hoping is for that spark where there's a lot of people who say, no, I'm done. I'm out of this relationship. That's what needs to happen on a societal level with our students and our educational factories. We need to have a breakup. If not a breakup, at the very least, a very serious talk, and you need to fucking change. Because you're ruining my fucking life. And I'm not going to have you ruin my life one more fucking day, and I'm definitely not going to have you ruin the life of my kid. Well, how are we supposed to do that? Demand more. Do the opposite of what has been beaten into you of shut up, you're a mouse in a maze, a bell rings, you got to get up, you got to go down the hallway, you got to get to another desk, you got to sit down, you got to sit there and wait for the next bell to ring, just like this lab rat. And you have to say, no. I don't buy this toilet tissue illness shit. I don't buy that if I don't do this, that I'll be unhappy. Because I'm thinking if I do buy your toilet paper, my asshole's going to rot. I'm not buying your toilet paper anymore. I'm not buying your factories anymore. It's going to take a large level of change, but it can happen. It can happen. Students can come together and make change. Just think of it this way. You're not only the widget that's being shat out of these factories, you're also their client. You're paying to do this. Don't go anymore. Students stop showing up. There's no more schools left. No, that sounds, oh, that's ivory tower shit there, Jason. Like, we got to do something. We got to do something. Okay, so you're just going to go along with the same line of people. And you're going to get some degree that says something today or something 4 years from now in 2024 that says you're ready for life. And you owe us $100,000. And the job that you're going to get with that degree is going to pay you, $50,000. And that means you've got to live off that $50,000, maybe pay for some children, and also pay for the interests that are going on your loans and whatnot. And if it's $100,000, you're probably pretty lucky, to be honest, in terms of your debt. Because if you marry somebody or if you have a significant other, you're going to bring their debt to the table. And what happens if you get laid off? What happens if your degree in 10 years from now is completely out of date and antiquated? Maybe you shouldn't have gone to become a nurse. Maybe you should have gone into air conditioner repair, welding, something that doesn't require all of that debt and all of that time. Maybe you should have created your own business instead. Just Why keep doing the same shit expecting a different outcome? The job market is a mess. Student loans are like one of the biggest burdens that our society is taking on, and nobody's making a change about it. You people need to demand more. You people need to realize what path you're taking and to see at the end of the tunnel, it's a fucking train, man. And I can hear it right now because I have people in my classroom saying, it's not all that bad, it's not all that bad. Okay, it's not all that bad. Go ahead. Good luck. Because it is all unknown. That's my point. It's all unknown. And if you're going to blindly just put your faith in, if I go through these hoops, that aren't too dissimilar from the hoops that I've just jumped through for the previous 12 years, if I go through these hoops, everything's going to be okay. Good on you. I'm just taking a look outside and saying, this shit's not really working out very well. Demand more. Demand more of your life. Demand more of your money. Demand more of your time and energy. Demand more of the world around you to allow you to really become the person that you can become. Or don't. It's up to you. Anyway, I believe it's now time for class to be dismissed. We'll come back later, and I'm going to show you some ways how you can demand more. How you can demand more within this very, very rigid, archaic system. But I promise you, you can come up with even better ways. So, thank you again for coming. This has been a Six Finger Learning podcast. I'm Jason Free, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Your physician, mineral, or muscus, and